Hey guys, so this is going to be another power aerial tutorial, and this time I'm going to be going over the Chimera, which is the most requested power aerial I've ever gotten, and it's pretty difficult, so I hope this video helps you guys get it. Since this is one of the more difficult power aerials, instead of just rambling about whatever I feel like talking about for the day, I'm going to go over some of the things that I've talked about before that will help you get this move. They're really pertinent to learning this move. And those are imagination, so using your imagination to kind of picture the aerial path so that you can kind of target your throw better, reducing the rotations on your power aerial, and then flexibility, having the flexibility to get to the Balisong a little bit easier. So for flexibility, this power aerial is going to be behind your head, so it's going to put your hands in a kind of awkward position. You don't really need to be super flexible for this because, I mean, I never, when I train, I almost never stretch, and my shoulders are crazy tight. They have very low mobility, and I can do it, so you don't need too much, but it does help to have a little bit of flexibility. The next thing is to reduce the spin. I've said before that helps you control your throw a little bit better, and for this one that's definitely true. I'll go into a little bit more, but definitely keep in mind that concept of reducing your spin down to one rotation or less when you go into this practice. And the last thing is that this is going to be behind your head, this power aerial, so you can't actually look and see what's happening with the Balisong. You really have to get a feel for it, and so being able to use your imagination, like I've talked about before, is definitely going to help you get this power aerial right and be successful with it. So I just wanted to do that quick review. I don't really want to go back into those concepts because each of those is like a 3-minute segment of a video before. If you want to go back and check those out, you can go through my videos if you need a refresher. But now I'm going to get into the actual tutorial. Okay, now the Chimera is this power aerial where you're just throwing it, so you have the Balisong behind your head and you're throwing it to your other hand behind your head. And so it's actually really simple in the mechanics, like what you're doing, but it's difficult to execute. And that's largely because, one, you can't see what's happening, and two, that flexibility factor that I was talking about earlier, where it's a really awkward position. And so what you can do to make this easier and to hopefully be successful at doing this move is to address those two issues. Flexibility, obviously, if you know any shoulder stretches, that helps. I didn't really focus on that. What naturally happens is you become more flexible as you try to do the move, so I didn't worry about that too much. I just kind of, one thing that you can do to work on the flexibility is just to grind practicing on the move. But there were a couple things that I actually thought of and decided to do to work as like tricks to deal with that issue of the Balisong being behind your head. And the first thing is to use your imagination, like I've talked about before, where you really have to be able to kind of feel the Balisong behind you, and then use your catching hand to meet the Balisong halfway. You're not letting that left hand just or left hand, right hand, whatever hand you're catching with, you're not just letting it hang there waiting for the Balisong to come to it. That hand has to come and meet the Balisong. So you have to be able to feel where the Balisong is so that hand can come and meet it. Something that also helps me is to reduce the spin of the Balisong for the power aerial. And so what that'll do is actually give your catching hand a bigger window to get in on the Balisong and grab it. So that'll make the aerial easier because you have a larger catching window. You don't have to be so precise in where you interrupt that rotation. Also, it kind of reduces the spectacle of the Chimera, but if you reduce the distance that the Balisong is traveling from your throwing to your catching hand, it'll make it easier because the longer the Balisong is between your hands and not in a hand, the more kind of obscure the Balisong's location will be. The harder it is to keep track of it because you don't have that sense of touch to help you, give you information about where the Balisong is. And so these two tips kind of lead up to a mistake I've seen people make, which is to not throw the balisong hard enough and therefore cause it to kind of like rotate a lot and do an arc behind your head. You don't want it to do an arc, you want it to snap in a straight line. It's a little bit easier if you have your throwing hand a little bit lower than your catching hand, but it looks the best when it's a straight line. But if you need to make it kind of a diagonal upwards, slanted upwards, that's okay. But you really don't want the balisong to arc. That'll make it a lot harder, actually. And so one reason that people might do this is unfamiliarity, but another reason might be kind of fear, because snapping the balisong into your hand like that is very dangerous. You can get stabbed, you can get cut really easily if you're not super familiar with this move. So that's where using a trainer comes in, because you don't want to build bad habits by having to avoid a dangerous edge or a dangerous tip. So if you use a trainer, get familiar with the move, then you do it with the real knife, you'll have that confidence of that trainer and the actual skill, so that you can really do this move crisply with a actually dangerous real knife. And then there's this kind of bonus alternative way of doing the Chimera that just organically developed in my style from one of the ways that I was doing the Chimera, which is to what I do is I kind of bring it from around my back and then go into a Chimera from there, from kind of a behind the back catch. And what happens is it turns into more of like a pass than a throw. And I don't even know if you can call this a power aerial, but it's definitely like a variation of the Chimera, and so I put it in here. I actually really like this. But whatever variation of the Chimera you do, what you're going to want to do after you catch it is you're definitely going to want to pull the balisong, so keep the momentum going. You don't want to let this move stagnate, because it'll definitely come back and chop you in the hand. And the last little tip is that balisongs that have a bigger handle to blade ratio are going to be easier to do this move with, and that's because your hand needs to get on the inside of that rotation to especially do, I mean, it's not so much with that second variation, but with the first one, the original, your hand needs to get in there, and with a longer blade, it's harder for your hand to, the window for your hand to get in and grab the handle unscathed is a little bit more narrow. Alright, now I'll go into the things to learn before you do this move, and these are just a couple suggestions to help you get familiar with the motion of doing the Chimera, so that basically when you go to do it, you won't have that uncomfortability that really makes this move pretty difficult. First thing I'd suggest, and this is what I actually did, is it looks kind of silly, but you do the Chimera in front of you. So basically you do the same motion in front of you and really pay attention and get a feel for what's happening, so that, like I said, you use your imagination. This will really help you kind of assist your imagination when you do it behind your head, because you'll actually be able to see it in front of you and then imagine it behind you. So that'll give you that familiarity to make this a lot easier. And then the only other thing that I would suggest before you go into this move is the Van Gogh. And that's because you might be able to see this, but the Van Gogh is basically a vertical version of the Chimera. So, I mean, the horizontal aspect of the Chimera really does add some complication to it, but they're essentially the same, they follow the same path and do the same thing, just at 90-degree difference of angle. And so that's everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. Next video, I think I'm going to be doing kind of an abstract, call it discussion, but like basically a 10-minute ramble, where I'm going to talk about something that I think will just help people just to keep in mind, because we've gone over so many moves, but we haven't really gone over the concepts that I think will help people create their own stuff, you know? So I'll just do something like that in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope your Chimera practice goes well. Alright, see you guys.
You're so fucking cool. You're just way too fucking cool. And I don't really care if you're king, and I don't really care for gold things. You'll be pointing at some girls and saying thinking, yeah, we had a fling. You're not fooling me, you're just a puppet on the string, just a puppet on the string. Oh, and they say, don't you worry, I'm the one. Then the very next day they say they're done, and I don't wanna listen to the shit you spun. No, I don't want to listen to the shit you spun. Walking to a party, feeling out of place. Everyone's too cool, everyone's too fake. I try to start a conversation, but I can't seem to relate. Cause you're so fucking cool. You're just way too fucking